So I'm sure you all know because you signed up for it. But this is, of course, Laura Bailey, voice actress extraordinaire. Currently, is it still running? Adventures Assemble still running?
It is still
running. So Black Widow, you can catch her there doing the voice. Of course, started out in Dragon Ball Z as Kid Trunks, in case you guys haven't followed her entire career. But of course, many since then. Fruits Basket, Fullmetal Alchemist, Bleach, Naruto, Monster High, K-On! And doing some video games too. I know Jaina Proudmoore in World of Warcraft, and others as well. So
Infamous Second Son that just came out.
Travis was just talking about that one too. So, and he's afraid you're going to get the big resin figure, and he's not. So,
that would be awesome. I hope so.
So I'll just go ahead and open it up to you guys. So whoever got a question, just raise a hand, and I'll call you.
How many characters do you voice at the same time and for different jobs, and do you ever get them mixed up because you're doing so many and they require different accents or anything?
Do you mean like in one session?
In different, like how many like games and movies and cartoons at once are you working on?
Oh, there's a lot. Next week, you know, it's 2 sessions a day, every single day of the week. Sometimes 3 sessions in one day. So it's a lot. And then sometimes in the sessions we'll be jumping from character to character, just between each script, you know. So like in Monster High, I play Laguna Blue, who's Australian, Skelita, who's from Mexico, Bloodgood, who's got a kind of a British thing going, and Honey Swamp, which she comes from the Bayou. So everybody's got a different accent, and it's an interesting thing to jump around in that show.
Next question. What?
What drew you to the role of Fetch in Infamous Second Son?
Hey. Well, when I first saw the character, I already knew that Travis and Troy had been cast. And the original design for her was so cool looking. She was like really delicate, and she had this ginormous oversized parka military jacket on and this cool makeup that covered her eyes. She was like hiding herself from the world. And just looking at her, you could see there was so much more than to that character than in most video games. And I wanted to play that and be able to portray that. And so when I went in for the audition, I got to read with Troy. And it was really intimidating, actually, because, you know, we're in there with all the other girls that are going in for the audition. And this is different because it is motion capture. It's not just voiceover. So we're auditioning in front of a camera and doing more like normal film auditions that I used to do back in the day. And some of the girls would show up in costume, because on camera you do that, you would show up kind of dressed like the character you're portraying. In motion capture, you know, we're going to be wearing a spandex suit, so it doesn't matter what we're wearing, but a lot of people don't realize that yet. So I showed up to the audition, and there's this girl that looks just like the character design for Fetch, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's amazing. And I went in, and thankfully Troy is such a good actor, and it's so comfortable with him that we really played a lot in the audition and got to just feed off each other, and there was a lot of improv. And I lucked out, and I ended up being the part. It was hard, though, because sometimes in motion capture, you know, when they have the character design already set, they have to scan your face. They have to make sure that your facial features are going to match with what they've already designed. And in that instance, they ended up, mine worked with her, but they ended up changing all the characters to look more like us anyway, because they liked what we were doing so much. They wanted to show, you know, all of the little intricacies.
What was it like working on the Saints Row series?
Awesome. Saints Row is one of my favorite games to play that I've ever worked on, just because she sounds so much like me, and you can run around and make them look like you and go and kick people's butts nonstop, and it's so much fun. The whole cast is hilarious, and on Saints Row 3, Troy set the bass track for the player character. So what's difficult is you have to match the timing, because the motion capture is set to our voices. They do it different on that game. So Troy would record, and then they'd do the motion capture, and the actors would act out to what Troy's voice had been doing. And then we'd come back in, and all the other player characters, and we'd have to match his timing, but with our own personality, because every boss has their own personality, for sure. And then, and I hated him. I was so angry at Troy, because his his timing is so weird, and he talks really fast, and then he'll just slow down for no reason. And he'll stutter over words, and it's not like that in the script. He's making stuff up, and you have to match that. And thankfully, I don't have an accent in the game. Like other people with like an Italian accent or something would be terrible. So in Saints Row 4, I got to lay the bass track down, and I intentionally made it as hard as possible, just so I could make Troy suffer like I did. And he did. He hated me during that process. It was really fun.
I have a question over here.
Yeah, do you approach voicing male characters differently? Do you approach that any differently than you do voicing female characters?
Spread my legs farther. It depends on the boy that I'm portraying. You know, Trunks, I definitely have a different vibe, or Shin-Chan or something. I would have a different vibe than you know, the boy that I play in like Blaze Blue, because I think he's a little more feminine. I guess I kind of do now that I think about it. I've never really thought about it. I feel like I'm more of a jerk when I'm playing a boy character. Like, so the things I say in between takes, you know, are grosser and burp a little more. I don't know.
Question.
How was it like doing the voice work for Jaina Proudmoore?
Awesome.
And when they approached you for it, you know, what was your reaction to it?
Well, when I first started playing Jaina Proudmoore, I was actually matching the original woman who played her, because I didn't take over until, what expansion pack was it? It was only like 7 years ago that I started recording for her, and she's been around much longer than that.
Early Crusade, I think.
Yeah, so it was hard because in games like that where there's already a presence of the character online, you know, you're having to match it and try to make it as seamless as possible for the players that are just joining the game and are kind of going back and forth between the two voices, which can be really difficult. And also, she's such an iconic character that I wanted to, you know, be true to what the fans loved about her. And now, thankfully, it's kind of transitioned so much. She's gone through such...
Yeah.
It's amazing, the things. And every single time I'm coming in, I'm like, what is she doing now? It's crazy. With her crazy white hair, and she gets all tough, and it's really fun to be able to explore that side of her.
So you enjoyed it very much.
I enjoy it very much. And Blizzard is so cool to work for. They're very, very good people.
Any voice acting coming up through Blizzard that you can share?
Heroes of the Storm.
I wish I could go online and look and see if things have been announced. I did take over the role of the Demon Hunter in Diablo 3 Reaper, the expansion that just came. Yeah, Reaper Souls that just came out. So I'll be doing Demon Hunter from now on, which is pretty cool.
That's good.
Were you involved with Hearthstone? Because I believe Jaina is also in there
Yeah,
as well.
she teaches you how to play if you choose a mage class, right? Yeah, I'll be your teacher.
So you voiced her in
Yes, I
that as
did.
well?
Yeah.
Nice.
Gentleman in the back, do you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
Will you be returning to voice Rise and Persona 4 Dancing All Night? Or maybe even Persona Q?
That's a good question. I don't know. Gee whiz, I don't know.
I asked Travis this question, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on it too. Hopefully everybody else does as well. The difference between voicing over a character that already exists that you have to match coming
Right.
over from Japan versus the original animation that you guys have been doing a lot lately here in the States.
What's the difference?
Yeah, and pluses and minuses. He said they both have their...
They do. They both have their pros and cons. I was just thinking about this. I feel like technically, as far as, you know, hand-eye coordination and really just the process in and of itself, anime is so much more difficult. And it doesn't get as much credit in the industry. You know, it kind of gets the low end of the pay grade and everything like that, which that's because of the way the contracts were set up a long time ago. But it's very hard, you know. You don't get your scripts ahead of time, so you're reading a lot of these things cold. And you know, if you're not the lead in the show, then you probably haven't been given the whole series synopsis. You don't know what's going on, and so you're having to really trust your director about where your character is going to go, you know. And so you're reading these lines for the first time, and you're having to match these random mouth flaps that sometimes the script doesn't line up. So you're really trying to make it work, and you're already taking something that's been established, and you want to stay true to that vein, but also make it your own, because we are all performers, you know. And every character has to have a little bit of ourselves in it to make it honest. But at the same time, something I really enjoy about that process is that I really love immediate gratification. I'm a big fan of that. And the great thing about anime is you see so quickly the show growing and evolving, and you can see this is the emotion that they're feeling right now. And I find it much easier to get to that emotional state when you already see it presented in front of you. And so, you know, I'll watch the scene in Japanese and I'll already feel the emotion of that scene. So going into it with my lines is much easier. That's harder in original animation because you don't have a reference a lot of times. Sometimes you don't even have a storyboard for the things that you're doing. So you are just kind of flying by the seat of your pants, and maybe that works. And sometimes, you know, you're in there with a big group of writers and producers and your director, and they may have had something completely different in mind when they wrote that scene, and they're trying to convey that to you. And sometimes it's not easy to say how we want it to go. But with original animation, you get to create something brand new, which is a really cool part of it.
So you just kind of talked about the differences between like something like anime and or, you know, something that already exists and something that doesn't exist. But just as far as within, let's say, the world of like video games, like my favorite parts that you've done were like Sarah in Final Fantasy and like Helena in Resident Evil 6. But what are some of the bigger differences between like a bigger, more influential kind of huge series like that as opposed to like some of the smaller, more kind of unknown things? Is it, you know, again, you kind of talked about like the pay, but what other kind of differences do you see between different like sizes of projects?
The amount of people involved in your ending performance. Sometimes with the more indie projects, that you get more freedom because you've probably been cast because they know your work already, so they just trust what you're going to do, and you get to play around a lot of times. And then with bigger projects, there's a lot of pressure. Like, you know, Resident Evil, we were very, you know, each session was very difficult because in addition to just doing voiceover, I didn't do any of the motion capture for that game, but I did do the facial capture, which is a really hard process because you have to match the movement of the motion that the actor on stage did. So if they turn their head, you have to slightly turn your head, and it's so weird, and you haven't seen your script before, and so you're like trying to read your lines, but you can't look down at it because your head is turned. And those scenes were very emotional. There was a large group of people. It actually felt like this kind of a room. So we had the booth, and then on the other side of the glass, it's set up kind of like this, and there were all the clients from Japan, and then all the clients from America, and like 5 engineers and your director, and it's like, and they're all watching you, like hoping you don't screw up. And then after you get done with the line, then the American director, you know, gives you a note, and then the Japanese client will lean over to him and whisper something, so he changes his direction, you know. Luckily, Liam is an amazing director, and he found a wonderful balance without making us freak out. So, yeah, it was a weird, crazy process.
Next question. Yes, sir.
If you had your choice of like picking whatever anime or game to do a voiceover, which one would it be?
Oh no, that's a really like hard question. I gotta think about that one. Give me time.
All right.
most memorable outtake while on the set?
Can we find it online?
Oh my gosh, I don't know. Well, there's the fruit basket outtake that they actually put as an Easter egg on one of the very first DVDs, and I was set up in the booth. It was I was probably in my pajamas. I'm still in college, so I'm recording in this totally inappropriate way, and I was leaning up against the wall. I had my feet propped up on the other side of the booth. The mic I've pulled down to me because I don't feel like standing up. And as I'm recording Sweet Innocent Toronto Lines, they have air conditioning in the whisper rooms at Funimation, but the AC is too loud, it'll blow on the mic, and so they can't. So they have to put a big giant block of wood over top of the AC dispenser so that it's not as noisy. And as I'm recording it, I guess I hit the wall or something because the block of wood fell off and slammed down on my head. And so it was a sweet tone, like, oh, God, you know, and then, oh, fuck! Like, all is Toru, and so they put it into the blooper reel. And then I guess more recently, oh gosh, there were so many with Infamous because it was me and Travis and Troy on set together, which it's just hijinks the whole time. The amount of times Travis and Troy stole each other's phone to like tweet out evil things like I can't say on camera, I'm sure, just gross things. And then there was the scene. I don't know if I want to give spoilers away for Infamous, but it's been out for a while.
It's okay.
Right?
You know Travis's character dies.
Okay. So the scene where Troy is like my brother, and by that I mean he's like my brother. And so we had to shoot the scene that we're like making out, and Travis is like right here on set. And me and Troy were grossed out so hard. Like after they yelled cut the first time, both of us like screamed and went like spit and like ran around like ugh! And Travis is just standing off to the side like pointing at us both like so awkward. So yeah, good times.
Next question. Sir.
I've got two questions actually. First one, what other than any motion capture or anything, what are actually some of the subtle differences between doing voice acting for video game versus any kind of
Animation or anime? You know, outside of the motion capture, we approach it very much the same way. I guess the biggest difference between original animation and video games is so often we record solo, which would be a huge transition for me, but I came from anime. So, you know, recording by myself, I'm kind of more used to it. A lot of times with video games, you don't get the whole script, meaning that you don't even get to see other people's lines, which is really difficult because you'll just have all of your lines all in a row and you just go down the page, because there could be like, I don't know, 2,000 of your lines that you guys have to get through in like 4 sessions, which can be very difficult. So it's just fast, you know, 3 takes of each line, move down the page, and you're like, what am I responding to? I can't read anything around it. It's totally crazy. So your brain starts to break a little bit. Just a little bit.
And then the second question, what goes into the process of what projects you pick? You know,
Right?
and, yeah.
Well, before, I kind of took anything that would pay me because I'm an actor. Now I have the benefit of being able to choose roles that really appeal to me and can help, you know, something that's different than something that I've played before. Sometimes I just want to play a role because it's funny or cute, or I like the people that are doing it, and so I want to work with them, you know. And sometimes a role like Fetch or something will come along and it's just like, oh, I have to be able to explore that.
And just kind of piggybacking off of this second question, how involved is Travis with your role pick process and vice versa?
It's crazy. We do talk about it. You know, like just before we came here, I got a job offer I was not sure about, and so I actually, we have the same agency, so I was talking to my agent. I'm like, let me talk to Travis about this, and I want to, get his opinion on what he thinks about the character. So I did, and we talk it through. Sometimes I have no idea what he's working on, and sometimes he has no idea what I'm working on. We'll ask each other's schedules every day, like, what are you doing today?
Do you prefer to work with him on projects, or I mean?
Oh, I love, are you kidding? The Avengers sessions are so much fun, and it's such a freaking blessing to get to work with him in the session. He's hilarious, and it's awesome to get to see, there's that comfortability there, which comes from the relationship, but also I get to see him grow as an actor and all the changes that he's made since when he played, Roy Mustang to now. He's grown so much, and I get to experience that, and it's so cool.
And Randy Throw.
How did you and him meet? Like,
How did
was
we
it?
meet?
Yeah.
We actually knew each other before either of us started voice acting. We met right after high school, and we were with the same. Actually, I guess I started voice acting right when I met him, because I started at Funimation at the same time that I got my agent in Dallas. And Travis and I would book jobs together, as extras or whatever on some random independent movie. And so I'd see him every once in a while, and then he was a big fan of Dragon Ball Z. So he apparently was watching it with his friends and saw my name in the credits and freaked out and called our agent and was like, how is she on this show? Give me her phone number. So he calls me and is screaming in my ear, and I'm like, I barely know you. But yeah, all of our friends were friends with each other, so we hung out and then became good friends, and you know the rest.
Got time for about 2 more questions.
What was it like working on Persona 4, considering you were on both the anime and the video game?
Awesome. I really enjoy doing the song. The producers at Atlas are so they're big fans of the series. They really want to make sure that it's done right. And his name's Yu, and he's just wonderful, and he's so great at explaining everything that's happening in the series and where Rise is going, and he wrote the translated script for the song, and he's a big concern. I was so sad when we went from the game into the anime, because we didn't do the song in the anime because they didn't get the same rights. I was like, oh man. But yeah, I'm a big fan of that series, and I can't say anything else.
One more question.
What was it like working on games like Skyrim and Fallout and things like that? Because I know there's usually a lot of voice work in those games. I know you play
So
multiple
much.
characters in at least in Fallout, so just kind of the general, was it very demanding? Or?
I am a big fan of those games. Those are the kind of games that I play, and so my dad was an original fan of Fallout, so when I got cast in New Vegas, I was like, what? And I think I did Fallout before I did Skyrim. Yeah. So that was fun to transition, go through all the different characters and go throughout the world and see when I could find myself. And then in Skyrim, it was so cool because I played the game and I wasn't in it at all. I didn't do anything in Skyrim before the DLC. And there's everybody in LA is in that game. I'm like, how was I not? What the heck's happening? So I really feel like I got the best character ever in that series, because she's the coolest companion character you can have. She can actually sneak and not get you caught, which is sure. Oh, are we good?
Andrew's looking at his phone too, so much. Can we do one more? No? Okay.
Alright. Would you ever think about doing more work on the Fallout series if they offered you?
Are you kidding? Yes, of course. yes.
That was definitely quick enough to get it.
Yeah, right?
So, everybody take a minute, please, with me to thank Laura for being here.